We are now to lesson 5 of art appreciation subject, and this lesson is all about the artist and artisans. So this lesson will introduce the artists who have dedicated their lives to the cultivation of the arts through their artworks, through their masterpiece of creativity, imagination, and daring throughout history. So the purpose or the aims to expand this into the wider world of the arts and culture, wherein other key players and movers are testament to how the production, process, consumption, and distribution of arts have changed profoundly. So, out of the shadows of these caves, outstanding headways was seen moving down history from Bronze Age down to the Middle Ages in terms of how man continued to utilize his surroundings to create varying expressions of his ideas and feelings. Through the exploration of his immediate environs, trade, and other experimentations, new modes, media, and techniques brought to light a wide array of artworks that instantiate the wealth that can be done when the artist's vision is tapped, harnessed, and realized. But the most integral development that allowed this identity of an artist to fully emerge is the systematization and sophistication that his world, the art world, has become. So the impulse to create is at the core of human civilization, much like the impulse to communicate through language. Early on, artists were embedded in the development of culture, and in turn, art was nurtured by the varying cultures in which it existed. So sometimes the work produced varied from the prosaic to those that explored a wide range of aesthetic possibilities. In our everyday lives, we are seeing the interactions with these objects or with these arts that is intimate in the sense that their presence was experienced in a multitude of ways and in all affairs of the man. Ornamentation in tools and other surfaces, weaving patterns in textile, sometimes the visual features it has, the design, the planning for architectural structures for an instance, and the ritual in textiles or ritual and burial implements. Artists even created places or spaces where communities may gather, and that is also considered as an art. So there are numerous monuments and memorials that are plotted over the world, such as this famous Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. You can see how artistic they are to create Veterans Memorial, and they have created an art piece out of this memorial. So there are other like the cave paintings that have an aura of mystery, like also the Pyramid of Giza, or have a looted comprehension like the Stonehenge. Okay, let's proceed now to the artisan and the guilds. Museums are packed with numerous artifacts and interesting objects from all over the world that have survived centuries for us all to see. So, have you ever wondered why some examples of artistic and creative production have survived to these days? What are the process they've been through, or what are the materials they have used to form or to create these museums that is still existing up to this day? Magnificent structures that are often appreciated not only for their historical significance, but more so for their aesthetic characteristics that render them unique. Become tourist destinations for those who wish to explore and see the remarkable facade interior and even the minutes of details up close. So perhaps what made the difference was the materials, the medium, and the principles behind the process of their creation or the reason behind this creation. Another contributory factor is the emergence of technology and knowledge in managing and conserving all of these objects and structures, enabling the retention of the integrity of the artwork and the intention of the artist in terms of the design and overall aesthetics. So, what are their inspirations, the artist's reasons why they come up to to consider the Gothic cathedrals and other megastructures that were built, like this one, all over Europe during the Middle Ages. Craftsmen and builders in the past did not have sophisticated terminologies and principles that architects and engineers abide by today. Yet they fulfilled overlapping roles such as the draftsman, architect, engineer, and even as the builder. So these roles, they all contributed to form a beautiful cathedrals. What they had was a sense on how materials behaved, how the environment, light, and weather patterns affected structures, and other more intuitive principles of creation. So they are studying those aspects. If yung light, kung okay bang gumawa ng building or ng cathedral kapag sobrang init ng araw, something like that. And also the environment within that area. Experimentation and luck must not also be forgotten. So Gothic cathedrals, along with other structures inspired by its architectural tenets, have survived through time, not only by their sheer durability, but more so through the articulation of the process that they followed. So again, an example of this would be the Cologne Cathedral. So in Germany, it is but one of the many examples of early Gothic architecture. The account was the master mason Gerhard Riles started the project in 1248. Imagine, they started this cathedral in the year 1248 but was only completed roughly 600 years later. That is why it holds a record as one of the longest construction projects to date. What is meant here is a kind of formalization of craft education in which regulation was set in place. Here, skills qualification was needed for an apprentice to register under a particular craft guild. These guilds were prevalent during the Middle Ages, particularly during the 13th to 15th century, where towns had formalized groups of artisans or craftsmen who took on a particular specialization or trade. The shoemakers, textile and glass workers, carpenters, carvers, masons, armorers, and weapon makers, among others. Again, in every art piece or in every artwork, we should consider all the actors behind it. So here, the practice of artists was not grounded on the weapon maker or on the idea of individuals' capacities or success. Rather, it is also the commitment to work together as a collective. It is not all about the effort of one individual. It is a group um, project. This is a teamwork in order to build a beautiful art piece such as this Cologne Cathedral. So guilds were a type of social fellowship, an association structured with rules, customs, rights, and responsibilities. With a lifetime commitment to a particular trade, an artisan develops immense skill and expertise in his craft. A master artisan or craftsman would then be open to hiring apprentices who would be under his tutelage or the group and instruction. In these guilds, artistry and technology flourish under one roof, so under one group. In the context of the cathedral construction site, the master mason oversaw the work by numerous men of varying artistic proclivities and skills. So, from the smiths, when you say smiths, these are the metal work. Then the carpenters, we also have the carriers, the glaziers. When you say glaziers, these are the stained glass artists, and among others. So, everyone under that group or under that team will contribute to the result of the artwork. So, in the visual arts, an example of an artist strongly influenced by this was Albrecht Dürer. He was born in 1471. His life was ripe with travels, fame, and fortune. He also published quite a number of books and treatises, including those that talk about practical skills as an artist, which would be useful to other artisans and craftsmen who dared to read it. So, mostly on perspective and human proportion, the work of Dürer were written in the first person singular format, meaning to say practical in the way it was written and was supported by illustrations. It also helped that his illustrations were laid out opposite that text that explains it. Although he was caught between the time when canons were still being followed, he also suggested to his readers that he was merely recommendations and that if they found a better way to go about it, then one should depart from what he had learned. Well, although the timeline is a bit skewed, the culture of artisans became prevalent in the Philippines as well, particularly during the Spanish colonial period. Permanently done with the spirit of the communal and the everyday, patronship changed the way art was perceived. This was both the case for religious and secular art, wherein the existence of artisans proved to be of immense use. It was through mimesis or copying that of artisans proved to be of immense use. It was mimesis of copying that artisans first learned to depict religious images and scenes. So they are starting to turn their art into something that is can be used as religious images. So during the propagation of the faith, Spanish friars commissioned a lot of artisans to carve, paint, and engrave images for churches and public sites. Each locality had a characterizing style or feature in the way their depictions were made. For example, the manner in which Boholano artists would paint saints and scenes were different from those of Rizal or in Laguna. So, sa bawat lugar na mapupuntahan mo, iba-iba yung way nila ng paggawa ng art piece. Like other Baroque churches that benefited from the talents of artists, Spanish colonial churches were also lined with frescoes and ceiling paintings, with a number of them undergoing restoration in the early 1900s. So there is an artist that is called as Project Kisame. So this is a collective endeavor amongst enthusiasts and advocates who aim to promote this art form through documentation, engagement, and appreciation of surviving sailing paintings in more than 60 churches in the Philippines. So yun yung goal nila. Mag um, gumawa ng art sa sailing ng mga churches, and their goal is to do it in more than 60 churches in the Philippines. So, technology and heritage conservation occupied a substantial part of this project. So, for example, here the Church of the Most Holy Trinity in Laway, Bohol. One of example of a Spanish architecture that has been documented is the Church of the Most Holy Trinity in Laway, Bohol. So this is built in 1822, where you can see here the ceiling paintings were rendered from style depicting biblical scenes. So in 2003, it became a natural historical landmark. Imagine, it was built in 1822 and it became a national historical landmark in year 2003. So it was therefore unfortunate that this church was one of those heavily damaged during the devastating earthquake that rattled Bohol in 2013. So this is the view of Holy Trinity in Laway, Bohol before the earthquake. This is the after one. The only section of the structure that remained erected was the bell tower. Although it is but a fragment of the real thing, the photos taken by Project Kisame were able to document the beauty of the sailing paintings prior to its destruction. Okay, so we will go now to the artist and his studio. So moving back to Europe, the big shift that propelled the evolution of the pivotal role of the artist in the arts started during the Middle Ages up to the Renaissance period. So most pivotal developments included the transformation of the craftsman to an artist or an independent artist. So the widespread patronization of secular art alongside the continuous production of works with religious subjects and the assertion of cognition, the will, and individuality. So before the Renaissance period, artworks were left unsigned. Artists claiming authorship for their works by affixing their mark onto the surfaces of their paintings were a big milestone in the history of the artist. Combined, this resulted in a wider variety of artworks, not just in form but more so in style and technique. The site that saw this shift was a very personal space for the artist himself, which is his studio. So today, artist studios have been a place of interest for the public. Hindi na lang ginagamit yun para dun gumawa yung mga artists ng artworks nila or masterpiece. Ngayon, ginagawa na yun para ma-promote palalo or ginagamit yun para ma-promote palalo yung mga artists nila. So it is interesting to see and learn where creativity manifests itself, especially since an artist studio is an extension of the artist himself. This is their home. So the studio model dates back from the Renaissance, wherein artists flex their relationship with their patron as a site where negotiations and artworks were made. There were those whose workstations were segmented into two. First is the studiolo and the bottega. So when you say bottega, this is where the work usually happened. Apprentice, apprentices studied under masters, assisting with manual tasks or the preparation of the painting surfaces. In the 7th century, these demarcations became lost, eventually merging together. This was especially true with artists who explored oil painting techniques whose long process can be can be described by cycles of mixing, layering, and drying of paint. This format remained throughout the latter part of the 1800s. In France, on the other hand, academies and art salons became popular as they did not only support the production of art but also the discourse around them. Criticism and analysis were highlighted as integral aspects of art engagement, and therefore the display of the artworks through official art salons was sought for. So to be included in the exhibition was deemed an honor, especially since it did not take a while before it was considered an arbiter of standard and taste. Okay, so the beginnings of industrial revolution had an interesting ramification for artists. A compendium of events released the artist from the limitations that affected the way in which they produce their artworks. For example, is their ability and portability of materials. If um, available ba yon sa time na gagawin nila yung artwork nila or yung art piece nila. And also the reliance on the wealthy patrons to place a commission. More painters enjoyed painting in their own behalf, creating works they wanted to create. It was also during this time that a host of styles developed side by side, allowing artists to fully grasp the potential of artistic license, with minimal up to no consideration for the prevailing tastes and stylistic preferences. And now we have the other players in the world of art, who are the other actors. The terrain in which the artist traverses is becoming increasingly complex. In the last century, some of the roles that have been existent since the beginning of art history have been properly dealt with, first is ascribed with a name, and legitimized into a sophisticated network of relationships and exchanges. This network is what we call the art world. So, who are the other actors or who are the other players in the world of art? First is the curator. Okay, when you say curator, this is one of the most elusive of roles to pin down. Institutional curators are typically affiliated with museums and galleries, while independent or freelance curators have the leeway to move around various projects, platforms, and art spaces in a multiplicity of terms. So generally, the role of the curator is more of the interpretation and development of the artwork. It is also the collection of um, ideas through establishing the significance, relationship, and relevance of these materials in isolation and or as part of a wider narrative. Curator sometimes is the hardest to define. It is a buyers and collectors who are probably the easiest to qualify. Often they are construed as one and the same but separately taken. So they are the buyers who are those who initially assess and survey the artwork that collectors are interested in. It is also their role to oversee the sale of the artwork on behalf of the collector, who may either be too busy or would rather keep his identity hidden. So if ever na may magpapahanap ng artwork, may magpapahanap ng painting, yung buyer if ayaw niyang mailantad yung identity niya sa public, doon pumapasok yung curator or yung buyer. Sila yung bumibili on behalf of the um, the person who wants that paintings. This is formerly ascribed with the term patron. Buyers and collectors are those who acquire and purchase artworks for a variety of reasons. For the appreciation and enjoyment of art, for the scholarship and education opportunity it may provide, for safeguard and preservation of their posterity, for investment, also for communicating a way of lifestyle, among others. So these days, collectors are becoming more involved well beyond extending their wallets. They have found another voice as an arbiter of taste. A collector who has established himself as someone who do not appreciates art but knows art, understands its behaviors, the patterns, the materials that they use, becoming a key player in making or breaking an artist's career or shaping the course of a museum collection. So, in addition, art dealers are those whose direct hand is in the distribution and circulation of the artworks through a variety of means. For example, is the direct sales through galleries, and the more recent player in the Philippines, for example, is yung auction houses. Pinapa-auction nila yung mga paintings para mabili ng mga buyer. So the knowledge and insight the art dealers are expected to have include as specialization in art form, style, medium or period, market trends, and even the interrelationships of other key players in the art world who will benefit from the circulation and distribution of the artwork he promotes. So again, we already mentioned the curator, the collector, buyer, and also the art dealers. So these are the other players in the world of arts. There are some overlaps in the way buyers, collectors, and dealers operate and behave. This is understandable, perhaps especially in the Philippines where delineation of roles is a bit ambiguous. There are many other rules that are inexistent in the art world today, and there seems to be no stopping of the cropping up of new ones. As the world is seen as a socio-economic network, it is important to note that major difference between museums and galleries. So these are the main institutions that display, distribute, and circulate different artworks. However, they behave in different ways. The most substantial demarcation that separates one from the other is the ethics that admonishes museum from entering into the more market aspect of the world. So, meaning to say, museums should involve themselves in the sale of artwork. The predominant role that museums are mandated to fulfill is the display of artwork for the education of the public and appreciation of these objects only. So, yun yung main purpose ng museum para maipakita at ma-educate ang mga tao sa kung ano yung art na nandoon sa museum na yon. For example, yung mga paintings and then pictures of the artist, both in isolation or as part of a collection and a wider narrative rendered possible by its inclusion in exhibitions or informed by museum programming. So let's go now to the production process. The process of creating an artwork does not necessarily follow a linear progression. The very reason why different art styles, periods, and movements were made possible is because there was a form of flexibility given to artists in terms of how to conceptualize and execute their ideas into reality. So the process is essentially three-part tale. So there are three stages of the process of artwork. So first is the pre-productions or the before, and then the production during and post-production after the art was made. The artist always begins with an idea that he wants to express or communicate with his audience. It may not necessarily be fully formulated, and so some form of exposure, research, and other approaches may be explored to get the idea long before actually making the artwork. So this process is of course the pre-production stage. The idea may take a while to form or may come as swift as a bolt of lightning. Some artists, however, birth their ideas when material manipulation is already underway. So this is when pre-production sometimes slipped into the production stage. The execution of the art may take a variety of forms. For example, yung mga paintings, sculpture, tapestry, photograph, film, or routine, yung mga dances, yung mga sings, live performance art, and a track or composition, yung mga music. Even tricky art forms such as conceptual art, which purports to be solely concerned with the ideas, take a variety of formats and may even be harder to pull off. So, hindi lang yung mga live performance or live art. Pati yung mga literary artwork or ideas, kasama din or meron din silang mga patterns para magawa yon. So, gathering and sourcing the materials needed for the creation of the artwork is either some other reproduction or the production stage. Either way, materials form one of the most crucial aspects that inform the direction, quality, and the final output itself. The last stage is the most drawn out. Ito yung post-production. When once an artwork is finished, it will then be decided on how it will be circulated not only in the world but the many publics. If the artist decides that he alone should see the work, then so be it. But most of the time, if not always, the creation of the object requires that it be seen, hard touch, and or experienced in variety of ways. So, hindi porket tapos na yung artwork, doon na matatapos yung process. Iisipin pa kung para lang ba 'to sa mata ng artwork, sa master or i-di-distribute pa 'to para makita ng public, i-di-display niya ba ito sa museum for free or ipapa-auction niya, something like that. Kasama 'yun sa post-production. So often, it enters into a new sphere inside the domain of museums, galleries, performance halls, theaters, and other spaces where interaction can take place. There are many aspects that go into post-production. There may include allowing the artwork to set, tweaking the artwork, preparing the artwork for transport and display, and even the promotion and inclusion of the artwork in publications or discussions. So, what is the medium and technique? Like what was previously mentioned, medium is one of the aspects of art that directly correlates with its composition and presumed finality of the artwork. It is one of the aspects of art, or this is the mode of expression in which the concept, idea, or message is conveyed. It may be concrete or tangible, for example, yung mga paintings natin, sculptures, also the monuments and structures. Or it may be ephemeral or something transient, such as track, yung mga nare-record na music, a film, or even a performance. The appreciation or engagement with the artwork is also affected by the medium. For example, in concrete works, the objects physically manifest themselves for a prolonged or lasting period. Okay, let's go now to the engagement with art. So, according to Anna Klein's The Evolving Role of Exhibition and Its Impact on Art and Culture, she wrote that exhibitions act as the catalyst of art and ideas to the public. So, they represent a way of displaying and contextualizing art that makes it relevant and accessible to contemporary audiences. For example, is the art exhibition. This is where the audience can see that art piece. So, by its nature, it holds a mirror up to society. It reflects its interests and concerns while at the same time challenging its ideology and preconceptions. So, the purpose of it is to keep the art relevant to society and to a diverse audience at any given point in history. This is one of the main goals of the art exhibition, and one of the reason is so important to the history of art. So therefore, it is apparent that exhibitions are not only of import to artists who rely on its being, but more so to the varied audiences who get to see them. On the other hand naman is the Paula Marencola's What Makes a Great Exhibition. It reads that exhibitions are strategically located at the nexus where artists, their artwork, the arts institution, and many different public intersect. This opportunity is singular as most interactions in the art world are limited to two players at a time. So kung kanina nung kay Anne Klein sa The Evolving Role of the Exhibition, important sa kanya yung makita ng audience yung artwork through exhibition. So here, there are single opportunity. Exhibitions create an opportunity in which the different roles in the artwork would get to meet, react, interact, and even enter into a discussion. So, what is the platform of this create exhibition? So, one of the most common platforms is through exhibitions, either some museums or galleries. Nowadays, there are other exhibition spaces that have opened up for artists to showcase their artworks. For example, the white cube often renders everything peaceful and calm. However, the exhibition process is an integrated sequence of events made possible by multiple individuals and groups within and outside the artist and staff. So this may be a long-term or permanent task, or it may be temporary or periodically changing. An artist may have a solo exhibition or may be included in a two-person showing or even a group exhibition. So, nakadepende yan sa artist if gusto ba niya na permanent na nakalagay dun sa museum or temporary lang nakahang for may certain time lang or certain period of time lang na ilalagay or di-display niya doon sa museum na yon. Or kung limited lang ba yung pwedeng makakita nun, um, may pipiliin siyang mga tao in in the society na pwede lang makakita nung artwork na yon or open ba ito sa lahat. So, nakadepende yun sa artist. So, there are some instances when an artwork is a standalone or a specific work that renders display under a slightly different structure or format. Okay, the last one we have the awards and citations. As with any organized endeavor, the arts and culture have entered into a phase in which another aspect of its practice can be realized. After an artist has spent considerable time in honing his skills, establishing the relevance of the body of his works, and even gaining respect from his colleagues in the art world, he may be considered or nominated for awards and citations. So in history, support for the arts and culture is not limited to the allocation of funding or patronship. One of the most common measures in which artists and other creative producers are given incentives and honor for their artwork is through state initiated and given awards and citations. So there are two major awards given to the artists in the Philippines. Ito yung pambansang alagad ng sining or Order of Natural Artists, and the second one is the Gawad sa Manlilikha ng Bayan or the National Living Treasures Award. So ito yung mga award na pwedeng makuha ng mga artists sa The conferment of the Order of Natural Artists is the highest national recognition given to Filipino individuals who have made significant contributions to the development of Philippine arts. Okay, Order of National Artists. So the very first recipient of this award was painter Fernando Aborsolo, who was touted as the grand old man of Philippine art. He was the sole awardee in the year 1972, a national artist for visual arts. So at present, there are 66 awardees of this prestigious honor across different artworks. Some of them were given the award posthumously, while others were fortunate enough to receive the award themselves. Some of the honors and privileges that an, a National Artist Award receives are the following. Yun nga yung the rank and title as proclaimed by the President of the Philippines. Meron din silang medallion or medal and a citation that will be read during the conferment. They also have the cash award and a host of benefits. So what are these benefits? Meron silang monthly life pension, medical and hospitalization benefits, and also life insurance coverage. Number four is the funeral and burial of at the libingan ng mga bayani. So, dun sila ililibing. And a place of honor a designated area during national state functions along with recognition or acknowledgement at cultural events. So, as you can see, there are many benefits when an artist got this prestigious award. The Gawad sa Manlilikha ng Bayan or the National Living Treasures Award was created in 1992 under the Republic Act number 7355, also under the jurisdiction of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts or the NCCA and the NCCA 2015. It was first conferred to three outstanding artists in the music and poetry in back in 1993. Number one is the Ginaw Bilog. So this is a master of the Ambohan poetry. Two is the Masino Intaray. This is a master of various traditional musical instruments of the Palawan people. And the last one is the Sumaon Sulaiman, a master of the kulyapi and other instruments. The recipients of the Gamaba are sought under the qualification of a manlilikha ng bayan who is citizen engaged in any traditional art uniquely Filipino whose distinctive skills have reached such a high level of technical and artistic excellence and have been passed on to and widely practiced by the present generation. His is her artistic competence. So that ends the discussion with regards to artists and artisans. So to sum up, the evolution of the artist throughout history is one of the most interesting progressions in the affairs of men. From the banalities of the artworks he created to assist and inform the everyday, he was caught in the midst of prevailing and shifting ideologies and utilized the power of the creativity and imagination in attempt to grapple with the world around him. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.